to another edition of Target Score Winnipeg. I'm Joey Slattery. Taylor Allen still on the road out in Japan. We'll be back very soon. Hope you're enjoying the rest of your trip out there, Taylor. Big episode here for you today. A little bit later in the show, we will have Calgary Surge play-by-play announcer Mitch Peacock joining the show to break down the upcoming games, a home and home between the Sea Bears in Calgary, starting on Friday at home in Winnipeg, and then carrying over to Calgary, which will be the home opener for the Surge after opening up with 3 games on the road. Could be a big swing in series here for the Western Conference standings, at least in the early part of this season. Just a reminder, too, if you're listening on audio, love to have you aboard. If you're on YouTube, good to see you. If you're listening to one or the other, if you're on the audio side, you might want to check out the YouTube portion of this podcast. At Target Score Podcast is our handle on YouTube, at Target Score Podcast. And of course, check us out on Instagram. That's how you keep updated with everything going on in the league. My reports are usually published there as well. Game day reports, weekly reports, all that fun stuff. At Target Score WPG is our Instagram handle. At Target Score WPG. My handle is at Joey Slattery TV. So make sure that you're following along, and on YouTube have your notifications set so you know when a new episode drops. And if you're listening on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, make sure to give it a like and a subscription, and tell your friends about it. Let's start off with first things first here as we move into the look back at the game that was. I want to acknowledge the opening ceremony for Chad Posthumous. Just a incredible job from the Sea Bears organization. So my hat's off to everybody out there, to all of you with the Sea Bears. It's a lot of work. This season alone, you take a look at championship weekend coming to Winnipeg on top of the regular season, a home opener with more than 10,000 people in attendance. And the whole day was just so well done. It was a rainy day on Friday, didn't stop people from coming out. The Chad Posthumous ceremony started earlier in the day at the arena, where the mayor of Winnipeg, Scott Gillingham, made a special presentation with an honorary street name. So on Donald, between Portage and Hargrave, that stretch is now known as Chad Posthumous Way. It's an honorary street name in honor of Chad, and the sign is right up as you go into the main entrance of Canada Life Center. You will see the new commemorative sign up there that says Chad Posthumous Way. It was a wonderful ceremony, and the mayor had so many great things to say. The family had some great things to say, and to see the appreciation and emotion there was something. And I agree with what Mayor Gillingham said in his interview afterwards, talking about just how important, Chad was to the community as a whole, beyond basketball. Basketball was the avenue that he used, but, to use it in a way that was so positive and continues to be positive in the community in Winnipeg and beyond. Let's listen to a clip there from the post-interview or the post-ceremony scrum with the mayor, just what he had to say about Chad Posthumous.
He's generous. Chad was a generous man, humble man, willing to do anything, give of his time and his energy, and he lived his life in such a way that he knew he had a responsibility to lift others up and to help others out, and that to me is just the Winnipeg and Manitoba spirit. We want to find a location that really represented Chad. So we have a street in the heart of our city, one of the key arteries within the city of Winnipeg, right next to Canada Life Center, where Chad thrilled crowds, made a lot of fans, and had an impact on a lot of people. His teammates, young fans, older fans like me, and so the location to put Chad Posthumous Way on Donald Street just seemed to be very fitting.
And of course, before the ceremony, president of the Sea Bears, Jason Smith, was there as part of the presentation as well. And, shed some light on just what Chad Posthumous meant in terms of, forming the culture of the Sea Bears and the importance that his presence has had over the first 2 seasons and will have moving forward. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly fitting, as he was such an important part of our community, the basketball community locally, and the city's community, the Sea Bears. He meant a lot to a lot of different people, and he was took that responsibility seriously. And so, to be able to keep his memory alive and keep celebrating the person that he was and what he meant to the city, I think is an amazing tribute. And we're very thankful to the city of Winnipeg and to Mayor Scott Gillingham for helping us continue to remember Chad for the amazing person that he was.
And from there, it was just got more emotional as more than 10,000 people were in attendance to watch the retiring of his number 33 put up to the rafters. It will be there, for every Sea Bears game above the South Pole, which I thought was, a very touching moment. South Pole being, kind of the entertainment part of the Sea Bears games, where the stage is set up for, Maestro Fresh West was there doing the pregame and halftime show. And, for all the stories we hear about Chad posthumous and just how much fun he had. I loved having fun, life of the party, and I thought it was just so fitting to have it there. And it was an emotional opening ceremony, tough to get through, I think, for a lot of people, myself included, doing play-by-play on that one. When we came back from the ceremony, it was just a great job from everybody involved. So hats off to the Sea Bears organization and everybody that had a piece in that ceremony to properly honor Chad. And I think it was incredibly well done. And that kind of set the tone for the rest of the game, right? 10,000 people excited to see this new team. And it looked like it was going well for a long period of time. First thing I noticed was the defense, looking at this team defensively seemed very sound to start. There was a lot more communication, got some points on transition. And things were rolling. It was a 24-point lead at one point that the Sea Bears had, and I think that was in the third quarter, possibly even the fourth. But I'm sitting here thinking, okay, this is, and we mentioned it in the broadcast too, we're sitting there thinking, okay, this is a time where last year all of these target score times were close. A lot of times it was the Sea Bears coming back in these games, right? And 24-point lead, you start thinking, okay, they're doing really well. They're handling an Edmonton team who had already played a game, handling them okay. They had maybe it was you're thinking the fact that they had tape on Edmonton and Edmonton's coming into this new, but the problem is once we got closer to target time, you kind of started feeling it slip away. I mean, at one point when they pulled into 15 points, they pulled that lead into down to 15 points. It kind of felt sound, right? It's like quietly they came in and they've cut it down a little bit, but even at target time, so they let them as much as 24 at target time. There was less than 3 minutes to play when that clock went off for target time, and the Sea Bears led by 16 points. Still seems pretty, pretty good chances, a good probability that the Sea Bears are going to walk away with that one. Target time started to get a little bit sloppy, but even as it went on, and it felt like it was an incredibly long target time, the Sea Bears led by 12 points with just 2 to go from the target. And then that's when Edmonton turned it on. I mean, they had some great plays, some defensive breakdowns. And the one for me was Tay Donald. I can't remember who made the pass, but it was a pass to Tay Donald that was through 2 or 3 defenders. It was a long lead pass for a wide open reverse layup, led to a timeout. And at that point, I think the score was 90-89. Right. And you can feel the tension in Canada Life Center for that one. It kind of felt like, wow, is Edmonton going to pull this off? And the next play, Tavian Jones draws the foul on Tay Donald, goes to the line. And Tavian Jones said in an interview, during training camp, when they were trying to determine, and we were trying to determine as a media, who's going to be the guy. There's no Teddy Allen. There's no Justin Wright Foreman. Who's going to be that guy to carry the team, right? Who's going to have the ball when the game's on the line? And he had said, when the game's on the line, of course I want the ball in my hands. I want that responsibility. So with 2 foul shots left, or 2 foul shots up and a chance to win the game, he had to hit both. It was 90-89 and the target score was 92. He hit both and avoided disaster on that first game, because had Edmonton come back, they would have tied the league record for target time comeback as they were down 16. And they were the ones that were come back against when it initially happened last year, with Calgary doing it to them. So, very happy to get out with the win. And as the old saying goes, if you're Edmonton, there's no moral victories. And if you're Winnipeg, there's no moral losses. Winnipeg starts the season 1-0. Edmonton drops to 0-2. Taking a look at some key players, though, one of the things that really stuck out to me was, Edmonton is a pretty big team. And it was a very tight contention or very tight contest in the paint for rebounds. Winnipeg out-rebounded them 54-51. And more impressive to me is they out-rebounded them 15-12 on the offensive boards. Kyler Filowich came in off the bench. He only played 18 and a half minutes, less than 20 minutes. Before the season got started, Mike Taylor said there's no expectations on this guy. What they want to do is let him find his own as he goes out there, right? Anything they get from these guys are a bonus when they're looking at rookies particularly. Well, Kyler Filowich comes up off the bench, 6 points, couple of assists. He said that his passing game was a little bit underrated. 13 rebounds, including 6 offensive rebounds. He led all rebounders with 13 rebounds in that game. Heck of a statement in his first game. Many wondered how he was going to transfer over from that college game over to, now playing at the CBL, his first pro season, his first pro game at home. I'm sure the adrenaline was pumping. The nerves certainly did not seem to be a factor. He was 2 for 4 from the free throw line. And, this is something that he struggled with. And I think he was at like 30% at one point, in his college career. So got to the line a couple times, hit 2 of the 4 shots. So that's something that'll continue to be a work in progress. And of course, everybody, I also heard some people might have not seen the granny shot. So some people were, and I got in trouble from Dave Crook, our color commentary. He doesn't like calling it the granny shot. I can't help it. On the schoolyard, we call it the granny shot. But the underhand free throw caught a few people off guard, and you could kind of hear the, what was that? It was kind of cool to see and to hear. But yeah, so everybody got to finally see that thing that made him viral. He's been working with Rick Barry, as I've mentioned in former podcasts, to work on that delivery to help improve his free throw percentage. Jalen Williams had a great game as well. Jalen Williams scored the first field goal of the game for Winnipeg. And, he finished with a double-double. He had 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 blocks. I talked about in the prior podcast, that was an element of his game I was excited to see, was the blocks and what I've seen from the highlights. And we had a number of them, 4 total in this game. So defensively, just, incredible. He was 8 for 21 from the field. So, between him and Tevian Jones taking a brunt of the shots, as we kind of expected. These guys played with the Grand Rapids Gold in the NBA G League. They've got some chemistry together, and they kind of stepped up as we expected. They were the 2 guys that really saw the most ball time in terms of scoring and just having the ball go through them on offense. And then Tevian Jones, right? As advertised, he was intense. He wanted to compete. He was there right till the end. He was barking at Nick Hornsby at the end of the game. Finished with 25 points, 6 rebounds, a couple of assists, a couple of steals, 7 for 21 from the field, 8 for 8 from the free throw line. So while the field goal percentage might have been a little bit low, he really answered when it came to free throws, including those 2 very big ones to remain perfect in that game. 100% on the season. 8 for 8, no small task. He was a workhorse. Almost 35 minutes, 34 minutes and 40 seconds of playing time for Tevian Jones. Clearly the guy that they're going to work through and where the ball is going to be going through on offense. And they'll be looking for his shots. Terry Roberts as well. Terry Roberts was fouled out towards target time. He played a total of just less than 21 minutes. 8 assists, right? Definitely your stereotypical point guard in the sense that he's a playmaker first, something we have not seen with the Sea Bears when it comes to that, at least as a starting point guard. So yeah, as advertised there, he had 3 turnovers, but 8 assists, 7 points total. He was fouled out at target time where Joffrey James came in. He had a pretty good game too, 22 minutes, 37 seconds. Again, this is a guy, a development player, came from the University of Victoria, fresh off a national championship. Played 22 minutes and 37 seconds. He had 3 steals in the game, had to step up and did. Solomon Young, 9 points, 8 rebounds. He was starting. He played 23 and a half minutes that game. And Emmanuel Acott, just kind of picking up where he left off last year. 17 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, played 25 minutes. He's a guy that is bringing over that continuity from last year. It seems like, getting that extra time, this year with training camp and recovering from his injury. His ankle does not seem to be a problem anymore. He looked great in that first game, though the team at target time definitely looked like it could have used, they're working with Nick Elam, and I think Dr. Nick Elam has some work cut out for him here. As we've mentioned before, when it comes to target time, it's not easy at target time. A lot of times it feels like the pressure might be taken up, like it falls on the leading team a lot of times. And, good thing for the Seabears for having the lead that they did. And it talks about, just a reminder, for people that are new to the league, new to CEBL, new to the Seabears, the clock is turned off. It's a lot like baseball or volleyball where you just got to get to the point, right? After the 4-minute mark, the clock is turned off. We're in target score time, and they basically add 9 points to the leading score, and that is your target score. So in this game, it was 92. But, for teams that are down, the competitiveness has to stay up, because the closer you bring that score, the closer you cut down that lead, or the closer you get to the leading team, the easier it is for you in target time, or the less work it is for you in target time to come back and manufacture that win. And it puts pressure on the team that's leading sometimes, because they just got to reach that 9. It's so attainable. It's right there, right? And we saw the Seabears, they were within 2 points. They just needed that one layup essentially to win that game. And Edmonton, came all the way back. And then you wonder if Edmonton was down 10, down 8, down 6, this could have been a totally different ball game. So, just a reminder of how important it is to play up until target time, and then how difficult it can be at times to close out a game in target time. So that'll surely be an area of concern and focus heading into this weekend. Some big games this weekend for the Seabears. They continue with this quick 2-game homestand to start the season, playing the Calgary Surge, and then they'll go to Calgary to play the Surge as part of a home and home. The Surge are 1-1. This will be game 3 for the Surge coming into Winnipeg, and their third road game. So they beat Edmonton in a very close game. It was a 2-point win against Edmonton, and then they lost a 2-point game to Niagara in Niagara. So now they're making their way back west with a stop in Winnipeg. And, a big game for them too. The one thing I've noticed from Calgary watching their 2 games, a competitive bunch, right? Jameer Nelson Jr. Was the guy that really caught my eye in the first game. Looks like he's, got potential to be a star in this league and beyond. But then he was relatively silent against Niagara, right? And to be fair, so was Ahmed Hill after having a great, opening game there as well for Niagara. But it's going to be interesting, because it looks like they have a few options in Calgary to go to for scoring capabilities. They're a little bit smaller. They're a fast team. And they've got Ruggsy Miller-Moore, another guy that's been around the league forever, but he wasn't in target time in that game either. So this is a really interesting team, coached by Caleb Canales. He's a well-respected coach. I think he was like the first Mexican-American coach in the NBA at some point. But this guy's got a ton of experience. Looks like he's really overhauling this team. This is a team that's had 3 different coaches in 3 years, right? And they've still managed to find a way to have winning records, get to the playoffs, and be a pain in the butt. They've really had Winnipeg's number overall. I believe they're 6-2 all time with the Seabears, only losing the games in Winnipeg. And Seabears players, coaches have said that Winnipeg could be a tough place to play too. Totally different atmosphere from what you get here in Winnipeg. But yeah, it's going to be a big 2 games, because you're getting 2 of those games of the season series out of the way early. If one team goes 2-0, it really can set up an interesting early start to the Western Conference anyway, as it comes to that. But let's break that down a little bit more with Mitch Peacock. Mitch Peacock, you've probably heard him, especially from Winnipeg. He worked for the Fox Sports soccer network while it was here. Tons of time with CBC and hockey and all the other sports, been to numerous Olympics. And now he's the play-by-play of the Calgary Surge, and he does a great job. He's also the play-by-play part of the TSN or CEBL on TSN team, doing play-by-play too. I forgot to mention that in the interview, but yeah, just a great guy, a wealth of knowledge. We're lucky to have him in the CEBL as a guy who's so well-versed, a legend, a veteran in the Canadian play-by-play verse. And he's got a good look at the team. He's there at practices. He's talked to this team. He knows what to expect. So let's break down their last couple of games, get a look, a feel for Calgary and what's coming up next here with these next 2 games both against Winnipeg. Here's my conversation with Surge play-by-play announcer Mitch Peacock. I'm joined now by Surge play-by-play Mitch Peacock, legend veteran in the field. Mitch, thank you so much for making the time for us today.
Great to be with you, Joe.
So first things first, you've been calling Calgary games now for 3 years, for as long as the team has been around, just like the Sea Bears, right there. I know one's an expansion, one isn't, but they both kind of feel like expansion, brother and sister. But when you look at this team this year, I mean, the biggest change on paper to me was bringing in Caleb Canales. There's a lot of hype around that signing. I want to get started just on your initial impressions with the new coaching staff. And I know you haven't called the game yet. Your home opener is actually coming up in the second part of this home and home on Sunday. But from your understanding with the team and seeing what you've seen so far, what's the biggest difference in this year's team that you've noticed?
Well, as you know, every coach brings their own perspective, their own attitude. Nelson Taroba in the first year was terrific, had his own approach to things. Terrell Vernon out of St. Francis Xavier was outstanding to work with last year. And had his own approach. And now, as you pointed out, Caleb Canales comes in, the first Mexican-American head coach in the NBA, the first former NBA head coach to work in the CEBL. And this is a guy who is just a dedicated basketball coach. He started as a video intern with the Portland Trail Blazers, worked his way into the role as a video analyst, became an assistant coach, then spent a period of time as the interim head coach. Before moving on and working in several other organizations as an assistant. And so what I see in this team is I see a very well-prepared team and a team that has an emphasis, I think, on winning. He's talked about championship mindset from the opening meeting with the team. He makes no bones about it that, every team wants to win. So let's not talk around it. Let's not pretend that that's not what we're here for. We're here to win. And then he goes back to process. And how are we going to get there? And I asked him about, what would be his fingerprint on this team? What would be his stamp on this team? And it sounds a little bit cliche, but I think I know where he's coming from. He wants well-rounded players who can play at both ends of the floor, that can play offense and defense. And he really talks about the interrelationship between defending and scoring and how, they're hand in hand. So he won't say I'm a defense first coach or that I want my guys to get stops and then think about scoring. They're all kind of mixed together. So what I would say about this team, first impressions are that they're very well coached and well prepared. And then with only 2 returning players, there's a bit of a time here to get used to what this team looks like. And very athletic, not super big, can run the floor very, very well. They've got a lot of speed, aggressive defensively. And capable of scoring in different ways is what I see so far. And really good chemistry early. And you never know what you're going to get, right? These guys have clicked right from the get-go. And so first impressions are good. A fun team to watch and a team that seems to like to play together.
Interesting that you bring up the new looks. I feel like that is one of the things we're really noticing across the league this year. There's especially in the West, there's a lot of familiar names from the first 2 years that have not returned or have moved teams. And there was a moment there, Mitch, during the offseason where I was kind of thinking, wow, like they're losing a lot of players here that are signing elsewhere. And it took a while for these signings to come in. And I didn't really know where to put them. And then all of a sudden they made some pretty big signings. The biggest one for me is Jameer Nelson Jr., and he had a great first game. But you have the familiarity in Ruggsy Miller-Moore. And for me, and I think for people outside of Calgary, and I'm sure it's the same for people in Calgary, but that, when I think Calgary Surge, I think Ruggsy Miller-Moore. But when you look at the team, now they have 2 games, both on the road. They go 3 games on the road to start the season, which isn't easy, but I imagine it does wonders for team bonding for this length of time away and going to all these different venues before they have their home opener. But first game, they lose by 2 in a thriller with Edmonton, or sorry, they win by 2 in a thriller with Edmonton. The next game in Niagara, they lose by 2, another thriller in that one. So my initial impression of this team is they're competitive. They're going to play until the end. But when you see these two, from the game 1 and game 2, was there anything that stuck out to you? Because aside from that I'm not quite sure who their player is, right? When the game's on the line, who do they want to have the ball? Because they've had 2, top scorers in 2 different games.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, and I think you hit a really important point very early on in your assessment there, which is that they do play to the end. That's a great attribute that they've displayed already in 2 games. Is that as long as the target score is standing, they're going to fight for it, and they did a really good job of finding a way to close out that game in Edmonton. And Jameer Nelson was outstanding in that game, as you talked about. And then in the game in Niagara, think about that circumstance. You've got a team that's getting to know each other. You're going into the building of the defending champs in their home opener with a lot of returning players on that other side, extremely well-coached team. And, it would be easy to think, well, this is a learning opportunity for this Calgary team. And they went in there and went down double figures early on in the game. And it looked like, maybe it would play out like that. And they pushed themselves back into the game a little, went down, I think, as many as 16 in the third quarter. And the next thing you know, you're going into target time and they've got a chance to win the ball game. And that's just, that fighting spirit that you talk about. And when you talk about a key guy, because basketball does tend to focus on 1 or 2 key guys, and you have to have them, there's no doubt. But one of the things that jumps out at me early on, Joey, is they played 10 players in Niagara. And, guys made contributions all the way through. It's not like, they lean on 6 or 7 guys to get them through. 10 guys played and contributed. And other guys contributed in the second game that weren't able to make as big a difference in the first game. So, that says something about a team.
Well, and that's the first thing I noticed, because as I'm prepping for the Friday game, the first of 2 between these 2 teams, I'm building my roster sheet, my scout sheet, and there's only 10 players. So I've got a couple of open spots, and I don't know if that's going to change come Friday or not when this game is played. This is being recorded on Tuesday, May 20th. So still some questions there. But when I'm looking at
but there's only 10, but they all play.
And that's it, right? And a thing that you brought up too, actually, we should bring this. Let's segue into that. I brought up Ruggsy Miller-Moore and, being kind of that face of the Surge for the last few years.
And you're right about that.
What's that?
And you're right about that. He is the face. Right? He is the most recognizable. Yeah.
And he doesn't play in target time, which to a lot of people, myself included, is a bit of a shock, to think that here's a guy that's been the go-to guy, really made his name in the CEBL. And, at this point in his career, at this stage, you think like, yeah, he's the guy they build around. He's in the prime. And then you see a situation like this. So I guess my question to you is what's the message being delivered by Coach Canales when you see something like this happen at crunch time?
I think what he's saying, without being over the top about it, because he doesn't seem to be, a yeller or, a guy who's trying to put people in their place. But what I think he's saying is if you're playing well, you're going to play. We've got some designs on who our key guys are. We believe in everybody on the team. But look, if it's your night, let's ride it, and that's what he was able to do in that situation. You take a look at, for example, Olumide Adebayo, 25 points in that second game. This is a guy playing his second game as a pro. And, he's riding the hot hand. He's a pure shooter and he was feeling it. And he was going to get an opportunity to get those minutes. So I think the message is less about Ruggsy and more just about the attitude of the coach and some of the depth that he's seen early on from his group.
Yeah, not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like that's the other thing too. Yeah. It's and I don't mean to allude that it is. It's just it is shocking, right? And to be fair, that narrative could creep in when when you don't have the context to it. But that was the one thing that really sticks out to me is like here's a guy that because I'm thinking as a new coach, you come in, oftentimes you're trying to find the continuity. Right. You're trying to bring something year to year. And let's be honest. I mean, Calgary has been pretty successful since making the move to Calgary. So I look at that and it's a little bit surprising. But now as we flip over to the games ahead, this is a pretty back-to-back. So these teams are going to get to know each other really well by the end of the weekend. But they start with the game on Friday here in Winnipeg. And then the series shifts over to Calgary on Sunday. And you'll have the call there on TSN Plus and CEVL Plus. But you look at this record. Calgary's really not had much issues with Winnipeg outside of Winnipeg. If I count correct, I think it's 6-2 season or like all-time record between Calgary and Winnipeg. And I think both those losses came in Winnipeg. But you look at this new team, Winnipeg looks totally different. They'll have a couple of games on, or at least one game on Winnipeg when they visit here. Winnipeg, kind of different from years past, right? They're a little bit bigger this year, and they kind of went towards, we're going to address the issues we had playing some of the big teams in the West,
Yes.
where Calgary seems, as you say, athletic, smaller, faster. What is the key here? Because now they're in their third road game. Feel like that's got to have some comfort there. And I always get the sense, and when I say get the sense, I'm told by players and coaches, right? When they play in Winnipeg, it's kind of circled on the calendar just because of the atmosphere that comes with playing a Canada Life Center and that.
Yeah.
So teams usually tend to bring their best games here. But when you look where Calgary is now, they're 1-1, a couple of close games. What is key in that opening of the series? There's 2 games, but you have to finish off this road trip. When you take a look at the makeup of these teams, what's key for Calgary coming into this one?
I think what's key for Calgary coming into the game is a couple of things, Joey. One is, and you talked about it, the environment, the atmosphere. I had a chance to talk with Caleb Canella's practice today about just that. And he says, look, it's all about opportunity. This is a real opportunity for these guys. It's a privilege to play in a building like that, with a crowd that size, the energy that they bring. This is a special thing. This is one of the nice situations that you get to go through as a professional. So think about that going in there. Use that to your advantage. Take that energy. Don't look at it as a threat or anything to be intimidated by, but look at it as an opportunity. Isn't this great? Look at this place. This is phenomenal. Let's go for it. This is a chance to show what we can do. And I think the other thing about it is keep building, because they like their attitude, they like their effort, they like their energy, but they know that it's, going into the games 3 and 4 of the season. And so they know that they like what they see early on, but they know they've got lots of work to do. And so they're excited to just take the corrections, much like you hear football coaches say all the time. Can they take the corrections from the last game and make the adjustments going into the next one? And so I think those are, in broad terms, those are the focuses, is recognize the opportunity of playing in a building like this. And then the second thing is make the steps forward that you can make based on what you learned the last time around. And then it'll be just interesting to see the individual players and their performances. I think that, when it comes to a starting group, you got Jameer Nelson Jr., you got Kyrie Thomas, you got Greg Brown, Gabe Osaboyan, and Ruggsy Miller-Moore. That's the starting group that we've seen so far. I think that as much as he wants to reward the players who are contributing and being successful on any given night, they still know that there's some foundation pieces there. And so they want to continue to have those guys get more and more comfortable. Kyrie Thomas is a guy who really didn't play basketball this last year. He went to Germany, had a bit of an injury issue, and wasn't able to play this season. So Kyrie Thomas, who's a former NBA player, former second-round pick, is a guy who's really just coming back into it. He's getting his game fitness. He's getting his shooting touch back. He's an older player, a mature guy. They really see a lot of leadership ability in him. So again, they're going to, when you talk about what to look for and what they're aiming to do coming into this game, it would be continuing to get certain pieces to the level that they need to be at.
And you talk about it's funny because, yes, it's only game 3 and 4 going into this weekend. 24-game season. Yes, it's been extended by 4 games, but still very, very quick, right? And I always tell people when they ask about, the CEBL and kind of the flavor that it has, I always say it kind of feels a little bit like football, that the season is so limited that every game seems to really matter. Now, you're coming into a tough atmosphere if you're the Surge into Winnipeg. You've got some guys that have been through it before, so I'm sure they're talking about it and what to expect. On the flip side, Winnipeg has not done great in Calgary, and that's another place where they've struggled with, and they've said it's been, for whatever reason, just a hard place for them to play. And then you throw in the added value for the Surge of home opener. Excitement's going to be there for sure. So as we move ahead, and not to jump too far ahead, but as you look forward to that game, is there any worry at that point that there's that they might be doing too much in the home opener? Or do you think when you get into that phase with the team that they have, that this is going to be a team that's just going to be able to kind of meddle through the noise a little bit and, just kind of play their own game, and it being the 4th game of the year as opposed to the home opener?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. And you don't ever really know until they tip and get after it. But I think that there is a benefit to having had those 3 games on the road in tough environments. I think that they will have some confidence and some sense of themselves coming into it. I think the other thing that might help on Sunday afternoon is the fact that it's the second game of a back-to-back against that same team. So, there's a bit of almost like a mini playoff series mindset to it, right? It's tough to beat a good team twice. It's hard to win in Winnipeg. So I don't think there's any risk of them, coming home and lightening up or letting their guard down or feeling like the hard part is done. I think that they have too much respect for any team coached by Mike Taylor. And I think that they have too much drive to want to let down in front of their home fans when they get the first chance to really show themselves. So I think the motivation won't be the issue on the weekend, given going into the Winnipeg cauldron and then coming home for their home opener. I think it's something they're really looking forward to.
What makes Calgary such a hard place to play, though? Like, in years past, the Seabears have talked about it being a tougher venue to play in, and finding their groove in there. What is it about that venue or that atmosphere, whatever the case may be? You've called a lot of games there now. What is it about that place that gives Calgary the advantage?
Well, I think in the same way that Canada Life Centre can be intimidating because of its size and the number of people in there, I think Winsport can be intimidating because it's so much smaller and the people are right on top of you. And, they stand from the opening tip until the home team scores. At different times of the game, they've got different things that they do to get themselves into it and try and be difference makers. And so I think there's definitely that. And then I think that the Surge have had a mindset over the last 2 years, being very athletic teams, very quick teams, that they're going to see if they can run you into the ground. They're just going to try to be not very much fun to play against. They're never going to give you time off. And so I think that's also part of what you're talking about. And, these season series between the Surge and the Seabears the last 2 years have been actually fantastic and critical to the season for both teams. In the regular season, 23 and in 24, the Surge won 2-1. And the winning of that last game in both years was really impactful to where the teams finished. It ended up that the two teams tied for first in 24, and that was the tiebreaker, right? Or 23, excuse me. And in 2024, the Surge with a late season win over the Seabears were able to separate themselves and get that home game in the wild card. So these teams are, one of the things I think is that you're talking about how difficult it is to play against Calgary. But Calgary and Winnipeg have been in situations these last 2 years, where the heart was pumping and both teams were throwing blows, and it could have gone either way. And I'm sure Mike Taylor's told you that. Like these games, sure Calgary won them, but there was not an easy game in there.
Totally. Well, and Winnipeg has struggled on the road. I mean, for people that listen to this podcast, we kind of beat that for all it's worth. They had one win on the road last year, 1-9. So road play has not been good for the Seabears, particularly last year. So I see, and I look at it this way, Mitch. The Seabears, I think, I said this from the first episode we had, is to me the game circled is that game in Calgary, the first road game, to see what the Seabears are capable of on the road, because it's a chance to make a statement. If you're Winnipeg, you're going on the road to a team's home opener, which, is kind of a gift that late in the season, so to speak, in terms of, a challenge where you're going to have the atmosphere and the excitement and all that other stuff. So to me, I think, not to say there's more pressure on Winnipeg, but I do think there's more on the line to prove from Winnipeg on a one-game basis, not looking at the whole season, but to set a tone, right? They talked about, on that first game of the year against Edmonton last Friday, and one of the things that, Tevian Jones says, the first game is important because that's where we set the tone for the whole season. This team has the added part of not only we have to set a tone for the season, we really have to set a tone on the road against a team that has had our number. Like putting it lightly, Calgary's been good. And to further that along, Winnipeg hosts championship weekend this year, so they're going to be in the conference finals. This is a team that has lost in the play-in every year. They hosted against Edmonton in the first year, and then they lost to Calgary, or the Surge rather, in Calgary last year. So here's the team that has not had playoff success. So I think there is a lot on the line against a team that's really becoming a rival, even though it's been a bit one-sided in favor of the Surge. I don't know if they'd feel the same way. But it's a rivalry that's brewing here. It's a team that they, need to figure out. And this is a team, the Seabears, that has said, we are not trying to relax on that semifinal berth or the conference final berth. we have to play it through. So I'm excited for this game on Saturday, or on Sunday rather. As much as I'm excited for the game at home in Winnipeg, I just think there's much more on the line on the Sunday game, simply because Calgary's first chance to make an impression at home, Winnipeg just to prove that they can win out there.
Yeah, and I think there's probably a real feeling, from the Winnipeg Sea Bears of different year, different team. Don't paint us with that brush. Let us write our own story. And I think that Tevian's remarks are telling that they plan to write that story, and they plan to write it from the start. It's a difficult thing in some respects to know you're going to be there championship weekend, right? Because you can say, well, we lost here, we lost there. It's okay, we'll be there in the end. But that's a dangerous game to play, and I don't see that from a Mike Taylor team, because you can't turn it on and turn it off at a high level of anything. And these guys, I think, are smarter than that, right from the top down. So they're going to be competitive. You're right. They're gonna make every game meaningful. And the story that you're talking about is an easy way to make it meaningful on Sunday. Is people might say this or that about the Sea Bears. Let's show them that this is not that team.
Well, that's where they're lucky to have Alex Campbell, because we had him on the show last season.
I was going to say it's like having a coach on the floor, but it is a coach on the floor.
Literally, yeah, because he coaches at the U of S. Yeah, he didn't coach this past season. He played it in Ontario and then in Mexico for a little bit. But yeah, he's 100% a coach on the floor. Yeah. But further to that, his experience in 2019, he played with Saskatchewan rather, when they won their championship. They were the host city, and then in 2023 with Vancouver, and that was not a great season for the Bandits. If we recall, they had a great team on paper. Didn't pan out. And the last three teams that have hosted have not done well in the season, nor have they won that game. So Winnipeg trying to flip the script there. Now, before we brought you on, I called you a legendary veteran, because you being the play-by-play for the Calgary Surge is far from your first gig. Where the CBL is very lucky to have you. Do a wonderful job out there in Calgary with the play-by-play. But let's go back a little further. You've got roots in Winnipeg here as well. You were with CBC for a long time. You've called all sorts of sports, not just basketball. You've been all over the globe, but what's this been like? How, you look at your experience to this point, even working with Hockey Night in Canada, things like that, to the Calgary Surge. What is it that drives you to keep doing this? And what is it about the Calgary Surge that has you coming back year after year?
Well, I mean, you know the answer to that. You're the same way. It's a passion for what you do, right? You have a craft that you want to hone, just like anybody else with a craft, that cares about it. So you have a craft that you want to continue to hone. You enjoy being in the environment, with the crowd, with the energy, telling those stories. I think I can also speak a little bit for you in saying, as a former athlete, this is a great way to kind of be as close to it as you can without being able to play anymore, which is kind of how I got into it in the first place. And then specifically, as far as the Calgary Surge are concerned, I was just really fortunate to meet the people involved, once they brought the team here very early. And I had an immediate respect for their commitment and what they were trying to do, and the energy around the sport here. And so I just thought, why don't I give this a try if they'll let me, give it a try and see what happens. And I was just taken by it right from the very start. And I think it comes down to, as in many cases, it comes down to the leadership, in the ownership and the office, and then the coaches and the players, the people that you see day to day and that you spend time with. And, I think there's something special about every sport. And I really enjoyed what's special about basketball. I just love the vibe. I love the people. I love the sense of community. I find the players very warm, very inviting. And, it's also fun for me, at this stage of my career, not to sound like an old timer, but as you said, it's not my first year. So one of the things I really like about it is feeling like a bit like a beginner. I like that it's relatively new for me, and that I'm still really learning a lot each day, and it's not some rehashing some old thing that I've done a million times before. So there's a lot of reasons why I like it, and I'm grateful just to have the opportunity to do it.
You look at the because when I first met you, I don't know if you remember this, but I just moved to Winnipeg, And you were one of the first person I reached out to because you were working with the Winnipeg Ice, which is that we could do a whole other podcast on that. The anomaly of maybe the greatest ever stop for a junior hockey team. That team was a lot of fun to watch. But then you move out to Calgary, and even this winter, you had some really cool opportunities. And as someone who's kind of getting his bearings back into play-by-play, I'm sitting there thinking, like, how cool is it to have these opportunities with technology, everything else that allows us to stay connected. But what was it like this winter, because you got to call some basketball, Bundesliga basketball, so calling English basketball overseas on top of the international hockey you do. But let's stick with the basketball part of it, because you said this is kind of the basketball realm's a little newer and it's a lot more fun. Then you find yourself doing this in the winter. What was that experience like? Because I imagine too it's got to be a little bit different in terms of you're calling for a country whose primary language is not English, and I imagine some of the names even would be kind of hard to get used to when it comes to local players, things like that.
Yeah, Joey, it's interesting. And again, you would know about this too, that the field is ever changing, and the opportunities change with it. And I think that, what I found in just trying to keep this train going is that if you don't change, you get kind of left at the station. So I've just tried to continue to build a network over the years and try to understand the changes in the field. And I got an opportunity going back to the start of the 23-24 season to do the world feed, English world feed of the German basketball Bundesliga. And it's a very good league, one of the better leagues in Europe. We've got a couple of teams in the Euro League and Bayern Munich and Alba Berlin. And I think what you do is you try to just start by working from what you know. And so I know how to build a roster sheet. I know how to research for games. I know how to build a network to learn more about things. So you start that way. And, luckily in my past working at CBC, I've done a number of events. In the old days in television, we would call it off tube, when you weren't actually in the venue, but you sat in a little booth and you looked at a TV screen. So it wasn't foreign to me to not be there. And I've been, in the last 3 or 4 years doing a lot of the new version of off tube from a little studio in my house. And so that's what I'm doing. I got this opportunity and I was able to set things up in my home and, work from there. And I've been really fortunate, whether it's the German Basketball Bundesliga or the Turkish BSL or Swedish Hockey League or Champions Hockey League, or World Cup Snowboard, working with some really high quality production teams, that bring you great pictures and great sound and help you to feel like you're there the best way you can feel like you're there when you're not. And, away you go. You just try to, it's like anything else. Once the ball goes up or the puck is dropped, you're just into it like you are any other time. And you want people to enjoy the experience right along with you.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay. So just a couple more questions here, but I'll ask you this. It's a two-parter. What is your favorite game or event that you've called so far? And what is maybe one on the list that you would like on the career bucket list, so to speak, that you'd like to check off before you're ready to hang it up?
Wow. This is kind of corny, but I just feel so grateful that I get to do it at all. And then whenever I get to do it, I appreciate it. But this might seem against the subjects that we've been talking about, but in 2007, I believe it was, I called a Major League Soccer game on CBC cross country with Craig Forrest as my color guy. And it was sort of my first, I was working full-time in Winnipeg on the Fox Soccer Report, which was a global property. And it was basically what brought me to Winnipeg. Very grateful, by the way, to the Aspers for all they did to provide opportunities in those days for people like me. And so I did this game. Nigel Reid was the play-by-play announcer, but had booked a vacation long before that season had started. It was the first year of Toronto FC. And I had, through an audition, been chosen to be a sideline reporter and occasional studio host. But they said, Nigel's going to be away and you have some play-by-play background. Can you call this game? And it just happened to be my sort of first national network event with a terrific, Craig Forrest is one of the nicest guys. And it happened to fall on Father's Day. Oh. And so it's just always stood out to me as it's unique and a first of sorts, and the family tie-in, and just I think some of the frenzy around Toronto FC that first year, and to sit up in that booth at BMO and just look around the stadium and see all those people and just sort of feel like how lucky can a guy get? So
Yeah.
so that was that. But like I said, that to pick something over something else is pretty tough because they're all, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool gig.
All special in their own way. Is there anything that
Yeah,
you'd like to do that you haven't done yet?
that's a tough one.
I think like the Olympic sports, right? Like there's so many random sports that like part of me is like, you know what? I'd love to just do like call fencing or something,
Yeah.
just something that's super off that I'd have to learn the entire sport. And at the global stage, like Olympics to me, anything would be the pinnacle, but.
Yeah, well, that's true for me. I've been fortunate to experience that. Like I've done 5 Olympics, and the first Olympics I did was in Sochi in 2014, and I called all of the freestyle skiing events, and I'd never called any of them before that. So, that was exactly what you're talking about. In 2016,
how stressful was that?
Pardon?
How stressful was that from like a prep standpoint? Like I feel like, because certain times when you're into it, like a sport, you can kind of focus on the finer details of things. But with something like that, I imagine it's got to be a lot more, weight on your shoulders, so to speak, to prepare for this, just to kind of learn the ins and outs.
Yeah. Well, one of the great things about working with CBC on Olympics is that they hire outstanding color commentators, and usually former athletes. And what I did in every case, I don't know, somebody must have told me to do this because I'm not smart enough to figure it out myself, but somebody must have told me that get in touch with those color commentators right away and turn them into your tutor. And that's basically what I did. So, 3-4 months before an Olympics, I met regularly with those color commentators to understand the sport, to understand who the stars were, understand the Canadian athletes, and to really get a feel for it. And then also to get a real sense of kind of the division of labor, like know your lane. So, I would develop a real sense with them of, okay, I'm going to do these things and you can do those things. And, I won't pretend I know more than I know, and we'll let you show everybody what you know. And so, that's kind of the strategy that I took and seemed to do all right for me. Rio, I did rugby sevens, women's rugby sevens, which was a new thing for me. Field hockey, I did as well. And then I was lucky to go Pyeongchang, and the following Winter Olympics were both short track speed skating and then diving as well. Diving for one summer games. So it's been really just a neat trip,
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, like that's what I mean, right? And I totally get where you're coming from too. And actually, Chuck Swirsky was one of those people too. Paul Jones, I remember. Well, Paul Jones had the quote that I kind of, really enjoyed and I use from time to time. And he's like, anytime you're getting paid to be in a gym to cover a game, you kind of hit the jackpot of employment. And I agreed with him. And once we had Chuck, I think it was in season 1. That was one of the things he said. Whether it's a high school basketball or the Chicago Bulls or the CBL, whatever, he's like, I put my all into it. And I kind of agree with it. When you're into these things, that's the fun of it, right? I mean, obviously it's, and I'm very fortunate to, have worked on the sidelines and now play-by-play with, the Sea Bears and, having that atmosphere, but it's the same thing when we do, Christian O'Mell, who's the play-by-play, he was on TSN Plus and CBL Plus for the first 2 years. Now he's pretty much full-time radio as CJOB as their games as well. But yeah, like him and I will do the games at the Westman, right? And it's like, he comes in same prep that you'll see, for Winnipeg.
There's only one way to do it, right? Yeah.
Totally. So for any young broadcasters out there, I know there's a few that listen to the show that, have aspirations to be, in sports media. And if it's play-by-play, take every game serious, whether it's minor league, peewee hockey, or, your chance of a lifetime in the NBA or NHL, do your prep work. Cause it really, it becomes part of the habit and it's a ton of fun. There's no way. It just shows respect for whatever it is that you're covering. And it shows respect for the people who picked you to take on the opportunity. And, it's like an athlete too. Like, why waste a rep? Totally. That's a good way of putting it. Wasting the rep. And also I like the respect part, because for me, one of those things is it's somebody's moment, right?
Yep.
Like at some point, someone's going to have, you just never know in a game, they might have the game of their life, the play of their life. And that might be the little memento that they keep in their career. The one, you know what I
100%.
mean? And if you're there prepared for it, it just makes it that much easier.
That's an honor.
One of the things actually, as we're talking about athletes and special moments, prior to the game against Edmonton, the Sea Bears did a great job at honoring Chad Posthumus, retiring his number.
Yes.
Very emotional
that
start.
Was an incredibly difficult circumstance to try and handle. And boy, I don't know if they could have handled it any better. It was really moving.
Totally. Hats off to the organization. I know how hard they worked. And, as I say, that on top of all the extra stuff happening this year, they did not put it aside, to put it this way. It was not a side thought. They really have done a great job, even leading up to the season. But part of this show, Mitch, what we're doing is, we're asking people on the show, if they have any memories of Chad. You've called a few games, out in Calgary. I don't know if there's anything for you that sticks out with Chad Posthumus in the time that you would have seen him come through Calgary and play the Surge that stuck out to you, or even just maybe what you've heard of the man and the legacy he kind of carries in the CEBL.
I'm probably going to just repeat things that other people have said, but what I would say is that two things jump out at me, when I think of Chad. One is the smile and the warmth and just the, just a guy who had a joy about him. And then at the same time, a fierce competitor. Like a big body who wanted to win as much as anybody wanted to win. And then, game's over and let's smile and put an arm around the guy on the other side. And, it just, both I thought were incredibly powerful. I thought that the joy I saw was really touching from him. And I thought that the competitiveness is what made him a professional for all of those years, so that's what I think of. I think, and as odd as it may sound, I think of facial expressions. I see the face, you just see that guy. And that's why everybody misses him so much, I think, because a lot of times you hear people say, it's not what you say, it's how you make them feel. And, he made people feel when he was around.
Yeah. He made a lot of people feel important, felt seen. He was a big guy and he had time for everybody. I imagine it was tough. I mean, we even talked to, he was our first ever guest on the show, asked him those things about being like, 7 feet tall and all these things. And he's like, yeah, every now and then I got a duck for a door and, people are looking or whatever, but he really his personality matched his size, which, I always liked. And he was the first signing in Winnipeg. He really set the tone for, even a lot of media members who, might not be familiar with basketball, and he made everybody feel comfortable. He was not afraid to share his story. He was always out in the community too. That was the other thing, like the community work, but you nailed it. He's like the textbook example of compartmentalization.
Yes.
Fierce competitor on the court, and you could see it in his eyes. Like just, he wanted to win. There was no messing around. But as soon as the game was over, and I'll never forget, because the last interview we ever had with him was the post game after they lost. It wasn't post game, sorry. It would have been the season ending availability after they lost to Calgary. And he was still smiling, right? As in, yep, like we'll be back next year. We're hosting championship weekend, but there's more to life than basketball. Yes, we lost the basketball game. We would have liked to have won the basketball game, but it wasn't the end all be all. And I that was something that stuck out to me even before everything all happened. And unfortunately, I've gone far too soon, but his legacy will last. Mitch, thanks for sharing that story. Really appreciate you doing that.
My pleasure. Such a sad one to have to talk about.
If is there anything else you want to add before I let you go? We had a good conversation here, but I want to make sure that you get your final words in.
My final words would be thank you. This is great that you're doing this, and you're doing a great job of it, and it's really important what you're doing. And so thank you for letting me be a little part of it, and thank you for what you're doing to help the game of basketball and to promote this league, which is, such an entertaining product at an important time for basketball in Canada.
I agree with you. It's growing like crazy, and I think this league has nowhere but up to go. And thank you for taking the bait. I was fishing for a compliment, so just kidding. Thank you so much. That's so nice of you to say. You, Jermaine, and Cammie do such a great job out in Calgary. Top-notch production crew out there as well. Love watching your games and hearing your calls. You're one of the best to do it, and I really appreciate making the time to come on the show here. And we'll certainly have you on again, especially once the Surge and Sea Bears match up.
You know where to find me, and I'm always there for Winnipeg. Winnipeg was there for us for a long time.
Another great interview there with Mitch Peacock, play-by-play of the Calgary Surge on CEBL Plus and TSN Plus, and play-by-play announcer on the CEBL on TSN team. So you'll be hearing him a lot, especially on Sunday. You'll be hearing him a lot when you tune into the game on TSN Plus this weekend. And yeah, some great words about Chad, right? He said it might be repetitive, but that is the point. Chad has been it had such an impact on people, and that's the reason why he stands out, because he is very much all those characteristics are things that everybody felt, and I thought Mitch put that perfectly as someone who's got to call many of his games and chat with him as a visiting team. And yes, Chad was great with the visiting teams, the home teams. I'm sure there were times he didn't want to talk to us, and he always gave the time and never gave a second where we felt like, he didn't want to be there or we were wasting his time. But yeah, again, we'll try to continue paying homage to Chad throughout this season and getting those stories of Chad and what he meant to the people that knew him, and what he meant to the league. So thank you, Mitch Peacock, for that. And yeah, he brought up some great points. I mean, you look at that 10 people on the roster, right? And all of them play. That's a short bench. That's tough. And you look at 2 close games, and that's what I was talking about earlier in this show or in this episode, is they are competitive, like 2-point games back to back. One's a win, one's a loss. Like, you're right there. This is a team that is, seems very competitive, in for the fight. It'll be a good test for the Sea Bears. As mentioned, Jameer Nelson Jr. started the season against Edmonton with a 22-point performance, put the game away. Had that Battle of Alberta. Then he follows up with just 5 points, 4 assists. Very modest outing for a guy that started off with so much potential, and he had nearly 30 minutes of playing time. So he's definitely a huge factor on that team. But Greg Brown-Lee only played 25 minutes, and he had 23 points and 6 rebounds. And then Olamide Adeloden had 25 points and 5 rebounds in just 20 minutes. So they've got some options. Those 3 guys have had, more than 20 points in the 2 games. The scoring has been spread between them. So here's a team that, is going to have its options. So it's not just as easy as, hey, we're going to settle in on Jameer Nelson Jr., or Adeloden and say, like, this is a game and we could just shut this down and everything will work out, right? I mean, even going back to the first game, Jameer Nelson, 22 points, as I said. They had Sean Miller-Moore, Rugsy Miller-Moore, rather, had 14 points in that one, where he didn't even play in target time in the second game, right? Greg Brown-Lee had 14 points. So, yeah, they've got options. This is a team that's well-balanced. And as I mentioned in that interview with Mitch Peacock, there was a time where I wasn't sure where this team was going. I thought the Surge would probably be at the lower end of the Western Conference, looking at the preseason predictions before they really signed anybody, because they were losing players. They had players that I thought that were key components to this team, and they were moving on, right? And then they found some great players, a couple of local guys there too. So this is a team that it could be a problem in the West, and it looks like here early on they are going to be a pain for many teams. This is a team that's not going to go away. So you look at the target score situation that happened with Edmonton, and I think if you're Winnipeg, there has to be a strong sense of urgency on that to make sure that you are giving yourself the most pads you can in the regular time, if you will. And if you don't, making sure that you're sticking to what works in that target time. Right now, everybody's got a feel for it. As mentioned, for a lot of players, this is new. In terms of, every game ending with it. I know some G Leaguers have had some experience with it, and some played in the TBT league and things like that. But for a regular season target score ending, this would be the first for a lot of guys, and or first in a long time, first together at the very least. So, we'll give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt there in terms of just getting used to the style of play, the mentality that comes with it, and how to deal with all the other things you might not think of that would affect the target time. But you can't do what you did with Edmonton. You can't be, you can't get away with what's from what was working. You can't lag defensively. They're going to have to remain sharp. This is a team with many options. At times they played really well against Edmonton and they had their number, but once that clock went off, they got to within 2 points. As I said, they had a 12-point lead on Edmonton with 2 points to the target and nearly lost that game. It came down to one possession. If that foul is not called and, Edmonton manufactures a steal, that game could have been over by a 3-pointer, an N1, and the way they were playing, there's no reason to believe that couldn't have happened, right? They were really frustrated with the call on Tay Donald, and maybe it was a little soft. At that time of the game, they were letting them play for a good period of time. Jordan Baker was frustrated, and I'll say rightfully so. But at the end of the day, the call's the call. The shots were made, and if you're not in that situation in terms of having to come back, if you're Edmonton, maybe you find yourself on the winning side of this game. But this is Winnipeg lucky to come out with the win on this one. I'll say that in target time. Played well for the most part, plenty of bright spots, but certainly some areas to work on as they move forward into game 2. Again, Simi Chateau not in the lineup. He's still out in Greece, so he wasn't in this game. Not sure if he's going to be around for this game. I'm guessing no, probably take a couple of games before he can join the team coming back from Greece. But once he's there, it'll be interesting. So going back to the Kyler Filowich thing, what a great first impression from Filowich. But I'm curious to see how that role changes between him, Solomon Young, Simi Chateau, and Jalen Williams. Those are all, big guys. Williams is going to get his time. We know that. But Filowich, I can see having a huge factor coming off the bench, especially after the last game. And but it'll be interesting to see how things shift with Chateau, because he is one of the best Canadians in the league, one of the best big men in the league in general. So once he gets here, it'll be interesting to see how the team forms. But they have to get through Calgary first. 2 games against the Surge coming up Friday, 7:30 tip-off at Canada Life Centre. If you're not going to the game, tune in on CEBL Plus and TSN Plus. And then on Sunday, quick trip over to Calgary, where they will take on the Surge in Calgary. That'll be Calgary's home opener. So the emotions will be high there too. Team's going to want to make a good first impression on their fans. I'm sure it's going to be a capacity crowd at the Winsport Arena in Calgary. You can catch that game. Mitch Peacock, our buddy, will have the call. That game is, actually, I should double check the time on that one. That game goes at 3 o'clock. 2 o'clock Central Time in Calgary. That game available on CEBL Plus, TSN Plus, and the Game Plus Network. And I should also mention that Friday's game will be on NLSE. So for our American listeners, if you want to watch the game in the States, NLSE is where you find that game. So we'll have plenty to break down next week when we get back. Hope you enjoy those 2 games. We'll see you Friday night and enjoy the game on Sunday afternoon. And we'll be right back here next week with another edition of Target Score Winnipeg. Until then, enjoy the game.